Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Georgia Essentials for Childhood annual meeting. I guess we'll go ahead and get started since it's 9:35. My name is Karsten Hartman, and I am the Director of Prevention and Community Support. And I'd like to welcome you guys with us today, and we're glad to have you here. Next slide, Matthew, please. So we'd like to encourage you all to subscribe to our quarterly Georgia Essentials for Childhood newsletter. And you see the QR code there on the screen as well as the web address in order to subscribe. Next slide. All right, so here's our agenda. So I'm going to take you guys through a quick welcome and introductions. We will have a quick activity, and then we'll go to the next part where Matthew will describe the overview for Georgia Essentials. After that, we'll talk about the CANUP. We call it the CANUP, and it's an acronym for the Child Abuse and Neglect Prevention Plan, but it's a state plan. Then we'll talk about and reflect on what has been happening over the past year. We'll have each one of our chairs from our 5 working groups will deliver a presentation to you to talk about what they've been doing over the past year. Then our DPH's Injury Prevention Program will give a project update for PACE D2A. And then we'll close out with announcements and talk about next steps. Next slide. All right, so the people who will be guiding you through today's presentation are members of our backbone organization, the backbone organizations that represent Georgia Essentials. And those are DPH, their Injury Prevention Program, PCA, and the DFACS Prevention and Community Support. So you'll be able to hear from these people that you see on the screen later. Next slide. So I want to welcome you guys again. I really like this picture because this picture of all of this yarn represents all of our differences, all of our different areas of focus, but we're all tied together, right? In our work that we are trying to do for Georgia's children and families. So this is a good representation of the work that we're doing in Essentials, and we'll talk more about it as we go along. Next slide. All right, so I'm pretty sure a lot of you have heard of inclusive conversations that used to be called civic dinners. And typically with inclusive conversations, they're guided conversations that focus on child and family well-being. And typically there's a host, there's a small group of people, and there's 3 big questions. We're going to have 2 during this presentation that we're going to break out and talk through. So what we ask is that each person has an equal time to share, and that you have one person speak at a time, but we'll guide you through those conversations as we go along in the breakout rooms. Next slide. All right, so we all know the saying, it takes a village to raise a child. But how do we apply this wisdom to our children right here in Georgia? To truly support child well-being, we must look beyond the family unit to address the societal factors that set families up for success. And we need to do it together with the help of our friends, neighbors, co-workers, business leaders, and the faith community. Together, we are all invested in the promising future for Georgia. This is a conversation on how we can come together as a village to help children thrive and build a better future for us all. So this is going to be the focus of what we're going to be talking about when we break out. Next slide. So a few ground rules for our conversations. We want to make sure that we listen carefully, but we engage with empathy, right? So everybody, we're coming from different backgrounds, different areas. Everybody will have an opinion, but we want to make sure that we respect the opinion of others and that we really hone in to what they're saying as well. And we appreciate the authenticity that they're bringing to the table. And of course, enjoy yourself and respect those with lived experience. Next slide. Okay, so once Matthew puts us into our breakout rooms, what we want you to do as part of our introductions is to share your name, where you live, and what inspires you to be an advocate for family and child well-being. Here's a question though. The Annie E. Casey Foundation has ranked Georgia 37 of all states for child and family well-being. 37, right? And this is in spite of the fact that as a state, we were named #1 for the top business climate in the country. Imagine what happens or what can happen when we all commit to helping Georgia's children and families thrive. So thinking about the societal factors that make a difference to child and family well-being, where do you see the biggest opportunity right now?
All right. Welcome back to everyone. Good to have you all back together. I hope you got to meet some new people and had some interesting conversations there. We'll be coming back into those same breakout rooms at the end of the meeting to talk about what's been gone over during our time together here and to continue some of the conversations you started over the last few minutes. Now, what we'd like to do is just for everyone's benefit, so we're all on the same page, is get back to establish a foundation for everyone of what, again, Essentials for Childhood and Georgia Essentials is as an initiative. As background, if you're unfamiliar, Georgia Essentials for Childhood is a framework of the CDC. And its purpose is to promote safe, stable, nurturing relationships and environments. As it says on the screen, it sees these as essential to prevent child maltreatment and to assure children reach their fullest potentials. So, Essentials for Childhood as a framework has strategies that communities and organizations, really just people coming together, can use to promote these sorts of relationships and environments. In Georgia, we have established the Georgia Essentials for Childhood Initiative with a mission of developing a common approach across multidisciplinary organizations and stakeholders to align activities, programs, and policies so that all Georgia's children, youth, and their families have safe, stable, nurturing relationships and environments. And you can see there as well that the mission or that the vision statement is that Georgia's children and families live in connected, nurturing communities where they live, learn, work, and play. And if you're interested in learning more or haven't been in a while, check out the Georgia Essentials for Childhood website, which I've just added to the chat. We have a steering committee of close to 24 organizations, a mix of state agencies, nonprofit organizations, academic institutions, and business community committed to providing leadership and governance around the initiative. And we thank all of those who provide this leadership through the steering committee. We also have a series of working groups. And on the screen now, you see the current co-chairs of those working groups. The 5 working groups are data, norms and narratives, policy, programs and practices, and systems and structures. And we'll be hearing from each of these working groups as we go through the course of today's meeting. We do also want to thank a few leaders who have recently left their positions within leadership for the initiative over the last year. Deborah Chosewood as the Systems and Structures Working Group Co-Chair, and Rebecca Hudgens, who is our Data Working Group Co-Chair. So thank you again so much for your service. At this time, we want to talk a little bit about some of the working groups and the work that they've done. We're going to hear from most of them a little later in the meeting, but we do want to go ahead and get into hearing from our policy working group. And so I'm going to turn now over to Melissa Heberlin DeWolf of Voices for Georgia's Children, who's going to share a bit more about what the policy working group has been up to over the last year. Melissa, good morning.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for letting me go early. I appreciate that. And again, my co-chair for the policy working group is Hannah Goldberg from GEARS, the Georgia Early Education Alliance for Ready Students. We can go to the next slide. So basically our role, you can see that the two co-chairs of the policy working group, we are with child advocacy organizations. And the role that we play as co-chairs of the policy working group for Essentials is really taking the input that we get from Essentials members who are also participating in the steering committee and in the policy working group, and letting that inform the advocacy that GEARS and Voices lead both at the State House during legislative session and also throughout the year with all of the different relevant child-serving state agencies. And I think we can kind of skip over this slide because everyone knows that policy is ultra important in order for us to meet our CANIP goals. Next slide. So last year, we worked on a number of goals legislatively that would help to support the CANIP goals. And so here is just a list of some of the highlights, the wins that we had during legislative session. One of the big ones that was aligned with CANIP goals was increasing paid parental leave for state employees and public school teachers. This was something that was a clear goal of the CANIP. There was a little bit over $1 million added to expand the home visiting pilot that the Department of Public Health is running, known as the Perinatal Health Partnership. There was also a little bit of money in order to increase some of the reimbursement rates for some Babies Can't Wait providers. And then there was also really landmark legislation that helped to improve the sort of safety and health aspects related to affordable housing. In terms of some of the other pieces of education or other pieces of policy that were important, one of the other ones I'll highlight, a large amount of money in order to increase payments to pre-K teachers, restore class sizes, and increase money for startup programs to make pre-K more accessible around the state. And then also a little bit of additional money for the CAPS program, which is subsidies for childcare, in order to pay the childcare centers who are accepting CAPS better rates for those accepting those students. We can go to the next one. In terms of family mental well-being, there were also a number of pieces of legislation that we supported. One of the ones that we're highlighting here is additional legislation to make it easier for licensed marriage and family therapists who come from other states to more quickly practice in Georgia. And then also a bill that was related to student loan repayment for mental health and substance use disorder professionals. In terms of physical health, but really this is also related to economic supports for families. There was a large amount of money put in to cover the costs related to reduced price lunch. So there's free lunch, but then there's also families who get reduced price, and there is an amount of money that they have to make up for it. A lot of schools were facing some deficits related to families not being able to pay for that cost. And so there was money put into the budget to help pay for that cost for schools. And then also very relevant to our work was that there was a commission created to study maternal and infant health. Next slide. So what are we looking toward for the next legislative session? We have been conducting a good bit of research into continuous Medicaid eligibility for ages 0 through 3. This is a new opportunity that states are taking up nationally. And for us, it's particularly important as Medicaid is the way that a large majority of our kids in our state receive their healthcare services. And states are able to have the option to have folks continuously enrolled in Medicaid at a variety of ages. And we were choosing to focus on 0 through 3 because that is such a critical foundation for a healthy start, where children are getting a ton of vaccinations, screening and early intervention. And so that's really our focus area. We're also looking at opportunities for Medicaid to reimburse for food prescriptions, as well as to get involved in making connections for families who are Medicaid beneficiaries who are dually eligible for other feeding programs such as SNAP or WIC. And so really working with Medicaid and the managed care organizations to ensure those connections, to ensure enrollment for families into those programs. We're also continuing to focus in on Babies Can't Wait. And at this point, our focus area is looking at opportunities to improve coordination with the program. And that would likely lead to some requests for potentially additional funding to increase salaries for coordinators. And then additionally, we're always continuing to work on child and adolescent behavioral and mental health service access. In particular, looking at, again, Medicaid ability, leveraging that program, and of course, the large federal match for those services to ensure that certain services that can help prevent families who have children with high mental and behavioral health needs from entering into DFACS custody because of the fact that the children are not able to get some of the intervention programs that could help stabilize them and help them to stay with their families. So for that, we're really looking at Medicaid ability of intensive in-home services that can be provided to children and their families in order to retain the children healthily and happily in their communities and with their own families. So that was the quick update. I think the next slide has my information as well as Hannah's information. If you're interested in informing our work, we would welcome your participation. We don't meet often, but we meet at a variety of different points with different partners throughout our kind of research gathering and advocacy processes. So if you're interested in informing any of the topics that you heard, or you have an area where you really think it would be critical for us to shift our attention to, please feel free to reach out to Hannah or me, and we would love to meet with you. So thank you.
Thank you, Melissa, and thank you for the great work over the last year that y'all have done in the policy working group. We've got the Melissa and Hannah's contact information there in the chat. In case you're trying to furiously scribble it down, it's there for you as well. And we'll make sure these slides get out to everyone as well, so you'll have that information. We do have a moment, just if anyone's got any quick questions. We're not going to get into nitty-gritty of the machinations of policy or anything right now, but if you've got a clarifying question, anything you want to ask, feel free to throw that in the chat, or you can turn on your audio here and just ask Melissa.
Melissa, hey, this is Rose Mars, and just quick, I want to make sure I heard what you said. Are we attempting to attach a Medicaid eligibility to what we would consider the high-end needs of those youth so that they would not come into care? I'm from DFACS, so that's why that's kind of what I heard, and I just want to make sure that's what I heard, because that's a
no, what we're really looking at is leveraging the Medicaid program and benefits for youth that are already Medicaid eligible and enrolled. So it would really be among the youth who are currently enrolled in Medicaid. It is making sure that they have access to the right intensive in-home services such that they do not come into DFACS custody. Yeah, so
Okay,
I hope that
thanks.
answers the question. Mhm.
Yes, it did. Thank you.
And just beyond that too, Rose, I'm sure you're keenly aware that, you know, a lot of sort of prevention services that are related to behavioral health are currently paid with pure state dollars through DFACS and other agencies. And we would be looking to ensure that those services are actually realized and paid for via the state health plan, the Medicaid plan.
Yes, ma'am. You're probably going to hear from me. So thanks.
I look forward to it. Thanks. All right, folks, if anyone else has any thoughts that hit you later, please feel free to email us. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Appreciate it once again. Now, we'd like to hand it over to our state coordinator, Beth Florence, who's going to share with all of us some more information on the journey that Georgia Essentials has been going on over the last year, as it looks to clarify its role in the state and its relationship with the state prevention plan. So I will turn it over to Beth now.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Thanks, Matthew. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Can everyone see that? Yeah, okay. All right, so just get myself ready. So I'm Beth Florence. I work with PCA Georgia, and I am the coordinator for the state's Child Abuse and Neglect Prevention Plan, which is formally a vision for child and family well-being in Georgia, our state's Child Abuse and Neglect Prevention Plan. So I know Karsten referred to it as the CANP when we first got started, and that's what I do through Georgia Essentials. And I have the privilege in doing that to attend all of the working groups. And so I'm really excited to go after policy because all of the things that Melissa said kind of come together in the work that we've done this year. So these next slides, this little journey I'm going to take you on is kind of where we are with the plan. So, oops, let me. So the state's Child Abuse and Neglect Prevention Plan actually first was developed in 1993. It sat on the shelf and didn't get a lot of attention, but we brought it back in 2018. And the aim in 1993 up to 2018 through today is to prevent child abuse and neglect at the individual, community, and societal level. The plan was developed starting in the summer of 2019. There were 25 planning sessions across 14 DFACS regions. There were 14 different sessions with service providers and professionals, and about 11 sessions with parents, caregivers, local government leaders, civic, faith, business community leaders, and then community members. We had more than 635 people take part in the planning sessions for the plan. And there were surveys that went out. There were 801 surveys submitted. And based on all of that input, the plan was developed and published and launched in March of 2020. So the plan was developed with 6 objective areas for prevention for children and families in Georgia and 77 strategies. So these focus areas were to increase family economic stability, family resiliency, access to early childhood care and learning, increasing family mental health and well-being, increase family physical health, increase the community knowledge and awareness of the societal factors that contribute to child abuse and neglect and our capacity to prevent it. So these are the guiding pillars, aspirations for the work to help improve conditions and create those thriving stable, nurturing communities for children and families. So with the launch of the plan was developed, and then it was the state, all 159 counties were broken up into those 14 DFACS regions. And each region took the plan, the 6 objectives and 77 strategies, and found and put together plans that were relevant to what was happening in their communities. So with the understanding that what happens in Metro Atlanta is not what's happening in Southwest Georgia or even on the coast, no one wanted to hand down a mandate to do everything the same way. So the idea was, let's give the plan to the people who understand the needs of their communities most and let them prioritize what areas they want to work on. So Georgia Essentials for Childhood and the steering committee were going to oversee the work of the communities of these 14 plans. Go ahead and continue here. The goal for the plans in each of the 14 regions was to help improve child and family well-being in Georgia. And as Matthew mentioned in the beginning, when the plan started in 2020, we were at 38. And the goal was to help move us up to about 33rd, so about a 10% increase in child and family well-being. So looking at the kids count data and, kind of watching our progression through that lens. Unfortunately, when the plan was kicked off, it was March 2020, and we all know what happened in March 2020. It was the start of the COVID epidemic. And the plan's progress was really impeded by the change in our world, but also some unexpected things as well. So there's a lot of oversight in the beginning in the planning process. And then when implementation started with the plans were handed to these communities, but without really any additional funding or adequate support to do a lot of the work that was being prioritized in the regions. So in looking at where we are in this evolution over the past year, we discovered that the plan's progress was impeded by the complexity and involvement that was required regionally. Regionally, the local experts know the needs, but they don't necessarily have the time, the funding, or the bandwidth to take on new work outside of their agency and communities. In some of these regions, we have 18 plus counties in one region. And so that network is really broad, and that has definitely been a barrier. But we also discovered that there's a really strong commitment to child and family well-being. Everyone is on board. The work is happening across Georgia. So the commitment to improving child and family well-being is there. We know that evidence-based programs are being used, that evidence-based trainings around the state are happening, but we need to figure out how we share that information and bring everyone together to understand best practices, elevate those best practices, but also understand what the barriers and the additional needs are. So the plan in its originally intended implementation format just wasn't working out as expected, but we knew the energy, commitment, and desire to continue to deepen the work was there. So what was going to be next? We needed to simplify the way that our state's prevention plan was working. So Matthew really helped lead us into a change in how we were looking at the plan. We kind of adopted a theory of change, and that was understanding that rather than following specific plans by region and creating new work, how could we better understand the work that was already happening? How could we see that the needs of children and families in Georgia and relate them to the 6 objective areas? How could we communicate that better across sectors? How could direct service providers and partners with lived experience share their feedback with funders and legislators? We realized a feedback loop was needed to inform all Georgians of where we are, where we need to be, and when we've reached our goals regarding child and family well-being. So with that came the understanding as we met. So the backbones met, DPH, injury prevention, DFACS, prevention and community support, Prevent Child Abuse Georgia, and Matthew, we all came together to really try to break down what all of that meant and how that was going to change our approach to the plan. And over, as I've been saying, over a lot of coffee and blueberry muffins, a lot of whiteboard marking and everything, we came up with some aha moments. And really, what became clear was that Georgia Essentials is a network and a vision, and the plan is the framework for pursuing the goals and the work of Georgia Essentials for Childhood. So while the plan sort of sat as an outside entity, we came to see that the plan lays out everything that Georgia Essentials wants to do. It identifies potential strategies to use to impact change in those 6 objective or aspiration areas. It identifies different sectors to be part of the work and gives very clear examples of ways that the faith-based community or the business sector can participate and help improve child and family well-being across the state. So in other words, the plan becomes this tangible guide and sort of the North Star for helping keep Georgia Essentials on track and helping to realize the desired outcomes for Georgia's children and families. We're working towards measuring those successes and, outside of and in addition to improving that kids count data. But the steering committee and the working groups are all focused on the same goal. So this is why I'm happy to be following Melissa, because she really brought together what's happening in policy and how it relates to each of the 6 objectives. That is a snapshot of the work that they're doing, but it helps us to organize and see based on the 6 objective areas what's happening. And that's really what we would like to see more with Georgia Essentials in the state's plan, is that shared feedback, shared opportunity for input, and just expanding the reach of those who are interested in supporting child and family well-being. So what does that look like? Here we are. Matthew went over this. We have Georgia Essentials. So we have the 3 backbone agencies that are guiding, leading, driving the work of Georgia Essentials for Childhood. And then we have the steering committee. And the steering committee's responsibility is the governance, strategy, coordination and accountability, and that external mobilization for the Georgia Essentials for Childhood initiative. So we have, you can see who's represented in that steering committee. And the steering committee approved and agreed with the proposed changes that the backbones came up with, and that's part of where we're getting into our work. And then next you have the layer of the working groups, and those are the people we're going to hear from today. Just heard from policy working groups. So these working groups are leading, it's carrying out the work of Georgia Essentials and organizing it into these 5 different areas. So with Georgia Essentials and the state plan kind of merging, we saw a need to make a couple of changes in those working groups. Specifically communications, we've shifted it to norms and calling it norms and narratives, and partly because in building this ecosystem of child and family well-being, we need to promote mindsets, goals, solutions, and accountability to talk about prevention in a different way. The focus is much more now on upstream prevention and dealing with the systemic issues that contribute to child abuse and neglect. And how do we talk about that? We're learning that when we use the words abuse, neglect, prevention, some people just don't see themselves in that work. But when we talk about child and family well-being, everyone sees themselves in that. Everyone's part of a family, whether they have children or not, and everyone's part of the community. So we can bring partners who are not traditionally inside of the child and family well-being system, social services, et cetera, and help them become a part of the work. Same with systems and structures. Systems and structures was formerly CANF implementation, but now with the child abuse and neglect prevention plan being the guiding document for Georgia Essentials, the work of that group really becomes providing education and technical assistance, collaboration opportunities, really reinforcing the multidisciplinary approach to primary prevention. And then helping again with that feedback loop. What are the needs? What are the barriers? What are the best practices? And sharing that out with the other working groups. So again, just to go through what each of these working groups does: data, we're fostering and supporting data literacy, data sharing and championing data-informed storytelling. Programs and practices, looking at evidence-based research to inform best practices, again, barriers, questions, resources. We're informing state level advocacy for funding and expansion of best practices. Hence, again, a lot of what Melissa was talking about earlier: policy, engaging and advocating for effective policies and practices and systems throughout the state, but they are considering that input of providers and partners across the state that work with children and who want to work towards positively impacting child and family well-being. And again, norms and narratives, I just went over that a little bit, but really advocating for the shared values of this ecosystem for child and family well-being, and promoting mindsets, solutions, goals, and accountability in support of children and families. Systems and structures, again, education, technical assistance, and collaboration, utilizing all of those best practices to help plan community of practice sessions. So to push the information of all of the working groups out to the wider community across Georgia. So, back to this image, we have the backbones, the steering committee, and the working groups, and that has traditionally been Georgia Essentials. But part of this exploratory work that the backbones did earlier in the year, we, with pulling the plan in, now we're also going to pull in those regional leads. So the regional leads were doing and implementing the 14 different plans for the regions. Too much work, not enough resources, but really valuable input. We need to know what's happening in our 14 DFACS regions, our 159 counties. So again, we pull in those regional ambassadors, and their goal, their work is to help us get the pulse of what's happening across Georgia, raise awareness, help us shift the norms, invite others to join in this work of child and family well-being, be an example of the work, and collaborate with others. My role as the coordinator is meeting with the regional ambassadors on a quarterly basis. I share out with them what's happening in the working groups, and I get their feedback. Already we've had the feedback from the regional ambassadors has made an impact on what the data group is working on, and just keeping that feedback loop open and sharing questions and sometimes even misunderstandings, but also data being able to ask, what do you need? What do you want? And so it really, by bringing the regional voice into Georgia Essentials, it's going to help us with that feedback loop where we have all different levels of engagement or work across the state represented. And those regional ambassadors also will help pull local members and champions into Georgia Essentials. So, whereas the regions worked on their state plans independently and looked to Georgia Essentials and its working groups for support, now Georgia Essentials looks to the ambassadors to learn about the needs, experiences, and best practices in each of our regions. So creating the feedback loop of expertise and experience at all levels. And where we are, where we need to be, and when we've reached our goals. So, who else should be involved? Who should those local champions be? It's everyone. Everyone plays a part in prevention. Everyone plays a part in the child and family ecosystem. These tiles on here are representative of all different sections of the state's plan. And again, there is information in the state plan that lays out opportunities and suggestions for things that these different sectors can do. As an example, I would just like to share that Lane Gresham and I were at the Georgia Chambers Congressional Luncheon And every single speaker that stood up talked about Georgia being a good place to raise a family. They talked about keeping the business community strong. They talked about the importance of Georgia being a place where our families can thrive, but we need that voice more involved in the work that we do, and understanding the importance of the funding. So that was a really great opportunity. That was outside of the normal, the day-to-day child and family serving agencies, but people who also need partners who also can hear what we're doing and find places for them to help influence that work and be a part of it. So when we bring it all together and we look at who's represented in Georgia Essentials for Childhood, we have the backbones driving the work. We have the steering committee steering the work. We have the working groups coming up with their different initiatives and working on that as a group, but then also reporting back to Georgia Essentials at large, as we're doing today. And then we have the 14 regions, and you can see we have Family Connection Partnerships, United Way, all different groups are involved in the work at the regional level. And where we're really going is to create that feedback loop where the regions are informing the working groups, and the working groups are informing the steering committee, and the steering committee is asking and informing the working groups, and we're looping it all around. In presenting this recently, the feedback I have gotten is we need the lived experience and the communities, we need the local partners to be a part of this, and so that has led to, we're going to involve the Parent Action Committee through DFACS and other representatives for the people who receive the services, people who are members of their own community. That voice also is invited, and we really look to their knowledge and expertise in doing this work. So we need that two-way sharing, and all of that engagement is needed to help shift the narrative from prevention to expanding the definition of prevention beyond the concept of a problem and towards the understanding of support. That support for children and families is how we help prevent child abuse and neglect. This is where we are today. So I've talked a lot, I had a lot of different graphs and things like that, but at the end of the day, what Georgia Essentials is trying to do, our vision for prevention, is that all Georgia's children and families have equitable opportunities and the necessary support to thrive in safe, stable, connected, and nurturing communities where they live, learn, work, and play. That means that our aspirations fall under that, and we've discussed those already, that increasing all of these areas are really important. They are crucial. They are the work of this initiative to increase opportunity and resilience, well-being, economic stability for all children and families across the state. How are we going to impact that? We're going to impact that through shared values, mindsets, advocating for cross-sector solutions, formal goals, advancing primary prevention for all children and families with accountability, with family supports, prevention structures. We need decision-making to engage our families and use evidence-based rapid feedback, have an equity approach to the structures for prevention, policies and practices that are designed and implemented to support positive childhood experiences for all children, connections, enabling diverse partners to share information, resources, and to collaborate on this work. And then resources. We need leadership and staff to be diverse and have the capacity and well-being to support positive childhood experiences, and family supports, opportunities, environments. We need access and access to meet the needs of families. So so those are our impact areas, and under that follow our working groups. They're doing the work for those impact areas. They're doing the work for the resources, values, and structures of child and family well-being. And under our working groups is that bottom tier of the previous slide, which is the ecosystem. Who is our ecosystem? It's everyone. It is you know, it's Georgia Essentials for Childhood, it's our regional ambassadors, our local champions, it is our families, our communities, all organizations. Everyone plays a role in the work of child and family well-being. Again, working on that feedback loop, creating a circle of experience, because, you know, our policy friends need to know what's happening, and we need, and Georgia Essentials serves as a place to come together to share that information of what's happening, but also to talk about, you know, Rose's question was a perfect example. This is the platform, the meeting point to share at a state, regional, and local level. We need to know what the funders are doing. We need to know what the policymakers are doing, and we need to know what's happening in direct practice. If you want more information, the plan, the Georgia's Vision for Child and Family Wellbeing Plan is that first QR code. And as Matthew said, this will all come out, the slides will come out with the recording. You can always find the plan at PCA Georgia's website. You can email me with any questions that you might have at Georgia Essentials. And please sign up for the newsletter, because that newsletter twice a year is going to report out on progress and what's happening with the different working groups. So, you know, the goals of this midpoint, you know, we're at the midpoint review, we're at year 5 of Georgia Essentials, or excuse me, of the state's plan. And in looking forward, we are looking to expand the understanding and concept of prevention as being an ecosystem of child and family well-being. We're looking to invite more partners in. Some of the work of the working groups is looking at what state agencies are doing, and then aligning the work of those strategic plans with the 6 objective areas. And as we expand out, we can look at what other partners are doing in the business community and say, hey, you know, you're working on this, you are part of our plan, you're part of helping create economic stability for children and families. Thank you for being a partner. We want to hear your voice. So everything we can do to help all Georgians see themselves in the work of prevention is really where we're headed with the plan at this point. We're working on some data tools. We are working on evaluation of the plan, and all of that will be focused on the 6 aspirations, those 6 objective areas for children and families in Georgia, and really help us guide the work moving forward. So if you have questions, please get in touch with me. And I appreciate you listening, and I'm going to pass this over to Jill.
Hi, everyone. So at this point, we are going to be featuring and highlighting all of the working groups and essentials. We have already heard from the policy working group, so we're going to hear from the rest of them now. If we want to go to, yeah, thank you. So here we have the schedule of upcoming, when they typically meet, and then also when their next meeting is. I'm going to put this in the chat box as well. And Matthew just put in all of the contacts so that you can reach out to them. And I just put the schedule into the chat box so you can keep looking there. And we're going to move on so we can hand it off to the next group. I believe we're going to start with norms and narratives. This is co-chaired by Liz Ferguson of Banding Communication and Lane Gresham of Prevent Child Abuse Georgia. And I believe Lane is on to give an overview today.
I am. Good morning. Thank you, Jill. I just, first of all, want to give a shout out to Liz, who has been co-chairing this committee for an extended period of time. I couldn't tell you exactly how long, because I came in about a year ago to replace Grace. So she's been extremely helpful, and she's going to be rolling off the end of this year. So we'll have a new co-chair starting in January. The other thing I'd like to say is, for those of you who are interested in our newsletter, I am seeing already this morning those subscriptions come to my email. So it's been like popping in. I think we've got 16 news subscribers so far. So thank you for that, for everyone who is clicking on the link and subscribing. We can switch to the next slide. These are all of our members and the organizations that they represent. The nice thing about this working group is that we've had a lot of consistency in the folks who are able to engage. So I think that's been really helpful as we've had some transitions in the way that we're talking about the work. We're one of the working groups that has had a name change. We can switch to the next slide, Matthew. So we have been, we were communications and outreach. And as Beth explained, very enthusiastically. So thank you, Beth, for your energy and momentum in moving us forward. We have changed from communications outreach to norms and narratives. And so we're shifting the way we talk about prevention to help the people that are engaged in this work better see themselves. So and this just felt like a natural evolution, and the work that was done around the theory of change in shifting from, the name change just made sense to us. So we are now norms and narratives, which has a nice ring to it. Some of the highlights this year as we've kind of transitioned the way that we are conducting ourselves. We have had some tangible things that we've worked on, some fact sheets and one-pagers. We've talked about the newsletter, the quarterly newsletter. 2 of the newsletters are direct content from the working groups, and then the other 2 are just reporting out on the plan. We have initiated a brand guide. We have Hannah Quigley, who's working as a graphic designer for Prevent Child Abuse Georgia, and she jumped in right away on this working group. It's been a huge addition to help us with the visual piece of things. Again, talking about the transition to change the way that we're talking about child abuse and neglect. And then we are leading discussions in our working groups to just determine how we're going to change the way that we talk about the ecosystem. We can switch to the next one. This is just kind of looking ahead, connecting the dots to the 6 objectives. We'll continue to lead the conversation in shifting how, when, and where the voices of children and families are present and elevated. So we would welcome folks that are on this call to reach out if you'd like to join our work. It's a pleasure to work with Beth on a daily basis, as she has really helped me understand better the Georgia Essentials role and the state plan. So we welcome anyone who'd like to help us continue moving the work forward. Be happy to answer any questions or provide any additional information.
Any questions? We're going to keep moving, but if you have questions, please put them in the chat, and Lane will keep an eye out and will include responses in the notes as well. Now we're going to move on to the data working group. This is co-chaired by Jaquan Jordan with the Georgia Family Connection Partnership, and also Grace Morrow with the Georgia Department of Public Health Injury Prevention Program.
Hi everyone, good morning. My name is Grace Morrow. Jaquan is not able to be with us today, so I'm going to be talking for both of us. The data, if you're new to Essentials and you're not sure what the data working group does, we do pretty much what it says. We are a collection of folks who some of us are data experts. That is not me. I am not a data expert. And some of us are people who utilize data a lot in our everyday work. And the purpose of our data working group is to try to address any of the needs or issues that we see around data and utilizing data in our field of work. One of the things that we're particularly concerned with is how do we make data more accessible, but then also how do we help translate data into a story? So for this year, we've had a couple of transitions. So as was mentioned earlier, I became one of the new co-chairs in the fall, and then Jaquan joined on in earlier this year in January of 2024. So I really want to, although I don't think that she's on either, but I do really want to take a moment to thank Rebecca Hudgens for her service in the data working group as a co-chair. She was a co-chair for the data working group when I joined, like several years before I became a co-chair, and she's really done a wonderful job to help guide me and Jaquan to sort of keep up with all of the wonderful work that she did in the past. So just a really big thank you to Rebecca for her previous service, and then her continued support as a really vocal member of the data working group. So in 2023, the data working group identified 3 priority areas for us to work on and talk about throughout 2024. And those include data sharing, data literacy, and then, like I said before, storytelling with data. I'm going to talk a little bit about what we've done so far with those. So in terms of data sharing, one of the things that we've been talking about a lot is how can we highlight the data resources that everyone in our group has, but also other data resources that we know are out there, just so that we're not trying to create new resources that aren't needed, especially if they already exist and are easily accessible. So we've been talking about developing a list and kind of putting that onto a web page of all of the relevant data sources. An example of this is Prevent Child Abuse Georgia has a data list that Jill Walsh maintains. And so we were talking about potentially using that as a framework to expand it and then promote it on a variety of other websites. So for example, for my project, Essentials PACE or PACE D2A, we'd put that on our website as well to link to that page. One of the other things that we have been looking at a lot is DPH's new grant when it comes to data sharing. So DPH received the AVERT grant from CDC. I don't remember what AVERT stands for, but essentially the AVERT grant focuses on utilizing syndromic data. And if you aren't familiar with what that is, it's essentially data that we can get feedback on in a very short amount of time. So whereas a lot of surveys are done on a yearly or bi-yearly basis, this is data that we can have new data on probably in a matter of weeks rather than in years or months. And the reason why we're interested in AVERT is because they are looking at firearm data, which is definitely relevant to a lot of what we do, but they're also trying to do something new where they're trying to track cases of child abuse and neglect through emergency room department data. And that hasn't really been done before in Georgia in the way that the AVERT team has been talking about it. So we're also trying to figure out ways that we can share what the AVERT team is able to do. They've literally just started, so there isn't data yet that we have to share, but we're going to be talking about that as that project continues. Moving into data literacy, the second of our priorities, there are a couple of things that that we've been doing. So we've been talking a lot about what are the missing pieces within the data literacy resources that are currently available, and what are we seeing and by data literacy, I mean people's ability to interpret data and then utilize it for their work. So some of the things that we've been talking about is creating a centralized information hub for data literacy trainings that already exist. We also spent some time talking about some data literacy trainings that my grant Essentials PACE is going to be coming out with probably in 2025. But what we're really trying to focus on is identifying what is the need, because most people aren't data experts. And like I said, I'm not a data expert. And so we're trying to figure out how can we make data more accessible to people. And then for our last piece, the storytelling with data, we haven't talked about this quite just yet because we're only because we've been focused on the other two pieces. But this makes sense because it really is a natural evolution of data sharing and then also data literacy. So if you're interested or if you have any questions around the data working group, we would love to have you join us. You don't have to be a data expert, and you can also come to us with questions about data. That's completely okay. We would love to have you and assist you, and then also hear what kind of data needs or data inquiries that you have. Thank you so much. And feel free to email me or Jaquan if you want to join us, or if you have any questions, or if you just have a data need. Happy to help out.
Thanks, Grace. I believe next we have the programs and practices. And again, if you have any questions for Grace, feel free to put them in the chat and she's going to look, and we can also include it in the notes. So for programs and practices, we have 3 co-chairs, Lauren Lynn Avery and Daniel Charles with United Way of Central Georgia. And we also have DeAndre Kane with the Georgia Department of Public Health Injury Prevention Program, and he works on the core SIP grant and program. So I'm going to pass it off to them for updates.
Thanks, Jill. Again, my name is DeAndre Kane, Georgia Department of Public Health Injury Prevention Program. So I'm giving the presentation today, or updating you all on behalf of the other 2 co-chairs, and also support for the actual working group is also provided by Megan Passano. She does all the support for the group. If you're a member of the group and seen the meeting invites, you've probably seen her name, whether the invite or update after our meetings. So we appreciate the work that she does, and I'll tell you a little bit about our group. And so, of course, like they mentioned earlier, we meet the 3rd Tuesday of every other month. And the purpose behind our group is to promote best practices across focus areas and sharing resources to support the work that we do. A couple resources that we do kind of share are Find Help Georgia and United Way 211. And apparently my fever and passion for resources in Find Help Georgia extends beyond my work, because I've shared those with friends and coworkers, and they send it back to me and say, hey, you mentioned Find Help Georgia. I just heard about this. So y'all have gotten to my head, and that's a good thing. So no complaints, just all good things. So I'll tell you all a little bit about current and historical focus for the group. So what we want to do is we build priorities and direction based on the people the individuals that we serve, and things that are impactful to our members. And so with this, we've kind of identified 2 things that have been ongoing, and then we'll have a couple of things that are emerging and become possible interest and focus areas for upcoming. So the couple of things that we have that are ongoing is support and promoting home visiting programs. With this, a lot of our members have home visiting background or have home visiting focus. We want to make sure that we're able to kind of shine light on what the home visiting program is, how they do the things they do, and how we can support the efforts that go into home visiting. Another prospect that we have priority is a glossary of frequently used terms to kind of frame positive strength-based ways to use these terms. And the way that we can identify these is so we can all use the same terms, and that we have the same nomenclature, and we have the same terminology. That way, if one group is talking about one thing and that translates over to another group, and then no one's lost in translation. And also, we want to make sure that we're kind of ceasing to use terms that have stigma attached to them, and promote like receptibility. For example, like terms at risk. So if we're no longer using at risk, we can kind of translate that into something like population of interest or population of focus. And that way, it kind of changes the perspective of what we're doing, of the perception of the term or the word, and it allows people to be more receptive and open to what we're trying to do in the work, and not get caught up on the language. Additional opportunities we would like to potentially see as focus areas in the future include supporting awareness and access to doulas, amplifying each other's projects and events. Of course, we all have, we're part of the working groups voluntarily. And so we all have projects and everything that work on outside of the working group. And so if we're able to kind of bring this to the actual working groups ourselves, share what we're doing, and then, just have that support among members, and we're able to kind of support the efforts and the efforts and actions of the members, and be able to have a better turnout and more support for those events and projects. Another section that we were looking at is supporting infant mental health. And so with this, we're hoping to have a presentation by our partners at DECAL, Department of Early Care and Learning, to present to the working group in November. And so we're looking at this is to support mental health, infant mental health. This is a new term for me, and so it kind of caught my interest and intrigue. And so anything that's like cutting edge or it kind of gives us a different perspective or being able to kind of look at things differently, I would love to bring that to the group and then see how we can build on that and kind of include it into all the things that we're doing. One of the last identified possible focus areas we have are supporting program staff. This might include like the Center for Family Research's continuous quality improvement work around home visiting or administering staff focus surveys and managing data for satisfaction. And so with this, we're kind of just making sure that, we are supporting the people who support us and making sure we have the support for all the work that's being done as well. So we've identified these, but we're not limited to these. So that's why we take strongly suggestions and ideas from our members. So whatever is passionate to you or whatever has your interest or you think that we should be focusing on, we're all ears. And so it's a collaborative group. And so we want to make sure that everyone's represented or feels seen and has some kind of voice in the group itself. So lastly, I'll go ahead and move into action and participation. So with this, going back to touch on our supporting of home visiting programs, we've worked with GEARS and Home Visiting Institute. And so on upcoming August 20th, the 2024 Home Visiting Institute meeting is taking place. It's the state's largest professional development and networking opportunity for home visiting programs. So 60% attendees work directly with families and the other 40% have program support. So with this, we'll be our partners will be giving a presentation on how to engage legislators in a way that kind of promotes self-advocacy among the individuals, and that we're able to kind of have that perspective and kind of shift the messaging and get the messaging out toward all those who can be able to help and get the message out and help everything that they're doing. And so that's going to be taking place after lunch on the 20th. And so we hope to see you there. I will drop that information in the chat about how you can take a look at the flyer for that and then hopefully be able to attend. It's free to attend. And so we would love to see you there. If you have any questions, I know you've had our contact information in the chat, so feel free to reach out to myself, Daniel, Laura Lynn, or even Megan, and we'll make sure we get you any answers you need or get you invited to our meeting. And I'll turn it back over to Jill.
Thanks, DeAndre. Always a pleasure to hear from you. Again, put any follow-up questions you have in the chat. And now we are going to move on to systems and structures. This was formerly the CANUP implementation group that has been renamed. And the co-chairs for this group are Laura Griggs with the Georgia Division of Family and Children's Services, Prevention and Community Support Section, along with Jennifer Stein from PCA Georgia, who's not here today, but we have Laura Griggs to give us an update.
Thanks, Jill. So as has been mentioned a couple of times, this year we've really been looking at that overall shift that, Beth talked about in detail earlier in the meeting. Really moving from operational implementation, the CANUP state plan, to transformational, talking about, how our work group is going to provide education, technical assistance, and connection, getting the work of all of the work groups out to the state, that feedback loop that Beth mentioned. So our work group was renamed to Systems and Structures rather than the CANUP Implementation Working Group, kind of in alignment with that overall shift to the theory of change and moving towards that midpoint review. We've spent a lot of time talking about that and thinking through that and how we want things to look going forward. One of the major things that we worked on this year was really getting state agencies to submit their strategic plans to us and their related documents. And Beth put them together in a spreadsheet where we are collecting them and mapped them to the CANUP objectives. So the idea there is to find existing intersections and opportunities among the different agencies that support children and families in the state prevention plan toward a more coordinated movement for child and family well-being. And most of these agencies that we mapped took part in the initial development of the CANIP back in 2019, but over time they've kind of become less engaged, at least at the more senior leadership levels. And, you know, with the onset of COVID and all of that, we know that that happened right as the plan was adopted in March of 2020. And, you know, these state agencies, as the largest and most influential entities really in the child and family well-being ecosystem, these state agencies are important allies for us, for the plan, for Georgia Essentials more broadly. And so for the plan, the CANIP, to be truly successful, these agencies really need to integrate the plan's 6 objectives into their ways of talking about and acting towards supporting children and families. So that's kind of what we're looking at right now. This mapping process will be followed by intentional engagement, which is that third point on the slide that you see there. And I'll put the link to that spreadsheet where we're mapping in the chat as well. And on that spreadsheet, we also included several non-state agencies that are on the steering committee. So Georgia Family Connection Partnership, GEARS, Voices, Resilient Georgia, et cetera. And those will be engaged as well, although separately from the state agencies. And that engagement process is really what we're going to work on in the coming year. And then kind of just the other role that our work group sees ourselves as having is supporting the other working groups of Essentials. So many of the other working groups work on like tangible collateral, whereas we kind of see systems and structures as more supporting and guiding the work of Essentials. So that's that last point on the slide, and one that we're continuously working on every year. And I think that's it for me, although Beth is kind of our third co-chair, honestly, for this working group. So Beth, if there's anything that I'm missing, please feel free to jump in.
I did want to, something I left out of my presentation in talking about that feedback loop is we have a platform called Basecamp, which is an opportunity to connect regionally, but also with the different working groups. If you are interested in joining Basecamp, it is again, you can share out things that are happening in your region, and you can hear about things that are happening in your region. So it's again, part of that feedback loop. It also connects with the working groups. It is a great opportunity. And if you're interested, please email me. I'm going to put my email in the chat and just let me know which DFACS region you're in. Additionally, if you're interested in joining any of those working groups, you can reach out to me. You can reach out directly to any of the working group chairs, but always reach out. You can always reach out to me as well. So, but please get signed up for Basecamp, just like the newsletter, because it's a great place to see what's happening in your region and help support and elevate all the things that Laura was just talking about.
I think that wraps it up for our working groups, and we're going to hear from Grace.
Hi everyone, sorry you have to hear from me again. So I mentioned earlier that I manage the Essentials PACE grant. The full title is Essentials for Childhood, Preventing ACEs or Adverse Childhood Experiences Through Data to Action. You may also hear people calling us the PACE D2A grant. That was our original name for the first iteration of the grant, or just the PACES grant. It doesn't matter. I'm just the lady who does work on ACEs with data and then also PCEs. So any title related to that is acceptable to me. So the Essentials PACE grant, as I mentioned previously, we had a first iteration of this grant for 3 years, from August of 2020 or September of 2020, excuse me, until August of 2023. So right now we're in the this is the end of our first year of the new version of the grant, which is going to be for 5 years. So our programmatic year is from September to August. And essentially the purpose of our grant is to try to make data more accessible to people who do the work of improving the lives and well-being of children and families in Georgia. And what we're really trying to do is to make data be more accessible and understandable. So we spend a lot of time listening to what types of data people need from a wide variety of folks. So doctors, social workers, nurses, teachers, school administrators, etc. And we try to provide them with a publicly available data place for them to be able to look at that kind of data. So we have a website that is run by our partners at the Injury Prevention Research Center at Emory University called the PACES website. And I'm sure Matthew will put a link in the chat as I am talking about it because he is a chat wizard. But you can check out the website for some of our data that's available online. But you can expect some really big changes. So what we're really trying to do in this iteration of the grant is really pump up everything that we did for the past 3 years. So our website has a mapping tool that's available on it with about over 100 different data indicators that you can check out. But we're actually going to be improving that, and we're going to be updating our website to include some more traditional data dashboard features, as well as add new maps and new data points on our mapping tool. We currently utilize on the mapping tool, we currently, on our data products, we have about 11 different data sources, but we actually look at 15 data sources overall. Oh, thanks. Yeah, Matthew has a picture or pull the website up. Thank you, Matthew. So you can check out this website to see some of our resources. You can give us feedback on our data mapping tool. And also, if you want me to come talk to you about the data mapping tool and how to use it, we're happy to do that. One of the other big things that we do is working on data literacy. So one of the things that we're trying to do with this iteration of the grant is actually create data literacy trainings that are specifically look at a lens of ACEs and positive childhood experiences data. We're also really into putting positive childhood experiences at the forefront of things now with data. So we have a data literacy presentation that we conducted a couple of years ago that's on our website, and you can take a look at it. But what we're actually planning on doing is creating a series of data literacy trainings that will be free and available to folks to utilize. And we're hoping on piloting those in January of 2025, around that time. So if you want to provide feedback on that, if you want to test some of them out for us or just learn more, again, feel free to reach out to me. Some of the other things that we've been working on this year, in addition to all of our surveillance aspects of our work, which is you can visually see in our PACE D2A web or in our PACES website. In addition to that, we also have 2 evidence-based practices that we're trying to implement throughout the state. So the first one is ensuring a strong start through home visitation programs. So we're actually partnering with DPH's home visitation programs to develop profiles for every single county in the state around home visitation. So we're actually looking at 54 different data indicators per county to try to help determine what are the needs of home visitation programming in each of those counties. And the idea here is that the DPH home visiting folks, but then eventually also other home visiting projects that aren't funded by DPH or aren't run through DPH will be able to utilize these profiles to help determine where they want to focus their efforts, or also even to advocate for different counties to their funders. I can talk a lot more about that. Especially in terms of what the data is and how we're how we've developed our sort of our scale for determining what the need is. So again, feel free to message me for that. But then the second component or the second evidence-based strategy that we're working on is promoting social norms that protect against violence and adversity. And the way that we're doing this is by working with PCA to help promote the Find Help website. So if you're not familiar with Find Help Georgia, it is a one-stop shop for you to sort of look up resources on a variety of different things and services throughout the state. The way that I like to characterize it is that it's like a statewide 211. It's really wonderful. Maybe Matthew will pull Find Help up, so you can take a look at it. But one of the really great things about Find Help is that we're able to have a look and see at a zip code level even, what type of resources are people looking for across the state of Georgia? What are the things that people are most interested in, that they need the most assistance in? And so we're actually analyzing all of that data and compiling it into a report that we'll do every year to share with Prevent Child Abuse Georgia, and then also DECAL and the other people who support Find Help Georgia, to help make recommendations for things. But then in addition to that, we are going to be creating a positive social norms campaign based off of that data, just to show people that it's okay to ask for help, and it's okay, here are some of the things that other people are asking help for across the state, and here's a place where you can look for that help. So that would be here at the Find Help Georgia website. I've probably talked too much, so I will stop. But if you want to learn more, we do so much. Feel free to send me an email. I am essentially the talking head for the project, so I'm happy to come and talk to you or talk to any of your partners about the work that we do. And then if you have any data needs, a big part of what we do is handle technical requests for data. So if you're not a data person, again, neither am I just represent data stuff. Feel free to send me an email. But now I'm going to turn it over to my fearless leader, Lisa Dawson, to close us out. So here you go, Lisa.
Thank you, Grace. And thanks everybody for being here today. I'm joining you a little bit late, but better late than never. Very excited to be here and just really thrilled with the continued participation in this group and having everybody here. I am leading the last inclusive question we're going to discuss today. And the question's on the screen. And let's see here. I'm having some difficulties with my computer this morning in getting things. Okay. Thinking about everything you've heard and learned today, and Annie E. Casey still ranks us 37th of all the states in family well-being. And even though we're named the #1 for top business, we need to do better. And just really thinking about imagining what can happen when we are seeing and allowing Georgia's children and families to thrive. So in thinking about everything that you have heard today, where do you see your place in the child and family well-being ecosystem? One key takeaway from today. I just really want to emphasize the inclusive conversations. And one of the things we talked about in our little breakout group was, our individual roles. There's on the ground helping kids, there's kind of the state level of systems, and then there's this very specific work that we're doing. All of them are equally valuable. I cannot overstate how important it is to have each of those perspectives from all the professions, helping us to understand our approaches and the potential solutions that we might offer from this group. So please keep up the inclusive conversations, helping folks understand this issue and how it relates to them is just critical. There is going to be more information coming about the CANUP midpoint review process. So please be on the lookout for that. It is our guide for how we're working at the local level. I know it's got lots of like 70 interventions in it. It seems a little overwhelming, but it really is a comprehensive document, and we are grateful to our colleagues at DFACT for the time and effort it went into putting that together. And I think we're really starting to see some fruits of that labor in the CANF working group, the small groups. We appreciate you so much. Please, please, please keep in touch. We appreciate everybody's participation here. Thank you, and y'all have a great day, great weekend.